My name is Mark Ellis, and in October of 2022, I almost got myself killed during a hunting trip in central Idaho. The only reason I'm still alive and able to tell this story is that my buddy Tyler saved me. I'm not talking about a bear or a sicko killing people in the woods. I mean something that shouldn't exist, something terrifying that walked on two legs, picked me up by the throat, and almost tore me apart. But let's start from the beginning. I'm 31. Born and raised in eastern Washington. I grew up shooting whitetails on small farms and clear cuts. Nothing fancy. Short hikes in from the truck, back home the same night, that kind of hunting. I'm a diesel mechanic by trade. I've always liked guns and the idea of real backcountry hunting. But up until that fall, the deepest I'd been in the woods was maybe a couple of miles off a logging road. I watched a lot of elk videos, read forums, bought gear I couldn't really afford, and told myself I was ready for the big leagues if I ever got the chance. The chance came through my buddy, Tyler. He and I went to high school together. He's the same age as me, but acts 20 years younger most of the time. Always chasing laughs, always doing dumb stunts, always sure nothing bad will happen, because nothing bad has happened to him yet. He's a decent shot on the range, and he's killed a couple of blacktails. But he's lazy about learning anything past the fun parts. He'll buy expensive camo before he buys a decent pair of boots, and he thinks watching a few TV shows makes him an expert hunter. Tyler was the one who pushed for Idaho. He'd gotten obsessed with the idea of a wilderness bull. Days out in the woods, big canyons, no roads, that sort of thing. He found an opening week in October when both of us could get time off, then talked his uncle into letting us borrow his camping gear. We each picked up A-tags for the Middle Fork zone in the Frank Church River of no-return wilderness and told our friends we'd be out of cell range for 5 days chasing elk in the woods. It sounded hardcore when we said it out loud. I don't think either of us understood what that actually meant. We didn't have horses. We didn't have a guide. What we had was a used topo map, a couple of downloads, and a plan we put together on Tyler's kitchen table over beers. Drive to the trailhead on the edge of the wilderness, hike our camp in on our backs, then hunt ridges and side drainages above one of the Middle Fork tributaries. The map was all contour lines and dark green, with just enough flat bench here and there to make it look doable if you didn't pay attention to the scale. I remember the drive more than I should. Narrow gravel, no guardrails, long drops into timber. It was cold already, highs in the 40s, lows in the 20s, with a gray ceiling hanging over the ridges and fresh snow showing up high. We pulled into the little dirt lot at the end of the road late in the afternoon. Just 2 rigs parked there ahead of us. No cell service, no lights, just a trail disappearing into dark timber and a beat-up wooden sign with the wilderness boundary etched into it. Standing there next to the truck, looking up at those canyon walls, I had my first real thought that maybe we were biting off more than we could chew. Tyler just grinned, shouldered his pack, and told me this was what real hunting was supposed to feel like. I trusted him completely. That was mistake number 1. We started up the trail with too much weight and not enough sense. My pack was somewhere around 65 pounds with the wall tent half split between us, food, stove, and all the extra junk I thought I might need. The trail climbed right away, switchbacking through dark timber. It didn't take long before we weren't talking much, just boots on dirt, our breath, and the rattling of gear. The country closed in on us fast, big firs and lodge poles, pockets of brush, the ground dropping away steeply off the side of the trail whenever we crossed a side draw. Every now and then, we'd get a gap in the trees and catch a glimpse of the canyon below, dark green slopes falling into a thin silver line of water. It looked a lot farther down than it had on the map. We made it maybe 4 miles in before we admitted we were done for the day. We found a small flat spot back off the trail on the lip of a little bench above a creek, just enough room for the tent and a fire ring someone had built out of rocks years before. Tyler called it perfect and dumped his pack like we were at a campground. I was too wiped to argue. We got the tent up, crooked, filtered water, and made a late dinner out of Mountain House and cheap whiskey. After we ate, we sat around the little fire we'd scraped together out of deadfall, and Tyler decided it was time to show off. He unzipped his soft case and pulled out a brand new 300 Winchester Magnum rifle he'd bought just for this trip. Stainless barrel, fluted bolt, and a scope that probably cost more than the rifle. Big, high-end glass with turrets he didn't know how to use but liked to spin anyway. It was overkill for elk, and way more rifle than his experience justified. But with that setup, even an idiot could hit a shoulder at a couple of 100 yards if he had a halfway steady rest. My own gun looked plain next to his, a beat-up Savage rifle chambered in .308 with a basic 3-9 power scope. I had zeroed myself. Nothing fancy, but it held a group, and I knew where it hit. Neither of us had bothered with bear spray. Tyler had waved it off when we packed, saying we didn't need it because we were already bringing guns. By the time we crawled into our sleeping bags, it was fully dark and dead quiet outside. No road noise, no planes, just the creak in the distance and the occasional crack of something in the timber as it cooled off. I remember lying there listening and feeling a mix of excitement and unease I couldn't quite put my finger on. The next morning, we were up before first light, fumbling around with headlamps and trying to find gear we should have squared away the night before. It was below freezing. Our breath hung in the beams of the lights, and our bootlaces were stiff. We ate instant oatmeal standing up, shouldered day packs, and dropped off the bench toward the main trail, planning to make a loop on a side ridge Tyler had decided would be loaded, just from staring at his phone map. By late morning, we hadn't seen or heard a single elk. We were moving too fast, talking too much, doing everything wrong. We cut some old-looking tracks, a little rub, but nothing hot. Around noon, we topped a little rise in the timber and walked right onto a gut pile. At first glance, it looked like any other elk gut job. Organs piled up, some blood, a few stray bits. But the longer we stood there, the less normal it felt. The cavity had been opened wide, then the pile dragged a few yards and smeared around like something big had been feeding on it. There were loops of intestine off to the side, half buried under churned-up leaves and dirt. It was messier than what I was used to seeing from clean work, and it didn't match the bear feeds I'd seen either. "Someone got one in here yesterday," I said. "Must have packed the quarters out already." Tyler poked at the ground with the tip of his boot like he expected a tag to be lying there. "Where's the drag marks for the meat?" he asked. "Where are the game bags? I don't see anything." The more I looked, the more it bothered me. Mixed in with the scuffed-up dirt were a few partial impressions that almost looked human at first glance, like the forepart of a bare foot pressed into soft ground. But they were too wide and too long, and at the front edge of a couple of them, you could see what looked like shallow claw marks cutting into the soil. It was one strange trackway circling and stepping around the pile, and that was it. No clear boot prints, no bear pads, no wolf tracks, nothing else I could point to and name. We were still trying to make sense of it when Tyler froze and stared past me. "Dude," he said quietly, "don't freak out, but I think we just crashed Bigfoot's lunch." I turned and followed his line of sight. About 60 or 70 yards uphill, just inside the next line of trees, something was standing in the brush. All I could see at first was a dark, upright shape between two trunks, like a guy in dark clothes standing still. No blaze orange, no pack, no hat, just a thick, solid outline. "Probably just another hunter," I said, but my voice didn't sound all that confident. Tyler snorted. "Yeah, sure. Or a Dogman, dude. We're in the middle of nowhere. Perfect horror movie setting." He said it like a joke, but he didn't laugh. I raised my binoculars, but as soon as I did, the figure shifted. It stepped back into the shadows and started moving sideways along the slope, staying just behind branches so I never got a clear look. Always half covered, always one tree in the way. It didn't crash through brush like a bear, and it didn't sound like a guy stumbling on deadfall. It was just there, then gone, leaving little flashes of movement between trunks until it disappeared completely. We called out once, a simple, "Hey man," but nothing answered. No whistle, no hunter here, nothing. "Still think that's just some dude?" Tyler asked. I didn't have a good reply. I told myself it was a person who just didn't want company, and maybe it was. Standing there over that messy gut pile with whatever that was watching us from the trees, the hair on my neck said otherwise. but we were a long way from the truck, and neither of us was ready to admit we were spooked. So we marked the spot on my GPS, tightened our rifle slings, and kept hunting. That night, we camped maybe a mile from that gut pile as the crow flies, on another little bench above the creek. The evening felt normal. We cooked, dried our socks by the fire, and talked about where we wanted to glass the next day. Tyler made a couple more Bigfoot and Dogman jokes when the firelight threw weird shadows on the trees, but his heart wasn't really in it. Neither was mine. I crawled into my sleeping bag, telling myself that whatever we had seen by that gut pile had to have a simple explanation. We had a few beers, then both fell asleep to the sound of the creek and wind in the trees. Nothing strange happened that night. The next morning, we packed up and pushed past where we had turned around the day before. Then, we finally stumbled upon what looked like fresh elk sign, tracks with sharp edges, droppings that still had shine to them, and a couple of saplings rubbed clean not long ago. For the first time on the trip, it felt like we were actually hunting instead of just walking around with rifles and heavy packs. We slowed down, watched the wind, still hunted through pockets of timber and little clearings, trying to move like we had seen on all those videos. We stayed on that trail most of the day, side-hilling and climbing and dropping through deadfall, catching the occasional whiff of elk. By late afternoon, my legs were shot, and my lower back was one long ache from the pack, but I could tell we were getting close. The sign got thicker, the ground was torn up where they had been feeding, and there was that musky barnyard smell in the air that tells you elk are nearby even if you cannot see them. We worked around the edge of a small finger ridge that broke off into a shallow draw. Tyler froze and pointed across the drainage. There, standing quartering away on the open slope, maybe 200 yards out, was a bull. Not a monster, but a good solid 6 by 6 by my quick count, fur glowing yellow-brown in the late light, steam drifting off his back as he fed. "Mine," Tyler whispered, already dropping to a knee and bringing up his rifle. I slid down beside him and watched him try to find the bull in that big piece of glass. He cranked the magnification up, then back down, then up again. He kept sliding off the target, chasing it, breathing hard. The bull took a step, then another, and I could feel the window closing. "You on him?" I asked. Hang on," he hissed. "Scope's being weird." The scope wasn't the problem. Tyler was. His hands were shaking, his heart was in his throat, and he was trying to fiddle with dials he didn't understand, instead of just settling the crosshairs and squeezing the trigger. "Let me take it," I said. "You're going to blow it." He shot me a look like I had insulted his manhood, but he slid out of the way just enough. I dropped behind my Savage, found the bull at low power, then dialed in a bit and set up on my pack. The sight picture settled down, crosshairs right behind the shoulder. I took a breath, let half of it out, and pulled the trigger. The 308 barked. I saw the impact through the scope. Solid hit right where I had aimed. The bull humped up, staggered a few yards, and tipped over out of sight into the shallow dip below the ridge. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," Tyler snapped. "I had him." "No, you didn't," I said, still watching the spot. "He is down. We need to get over there before it gets dark." Instead of being excited that we had a bull on the ground, Tyler went quiet and sour. He started complaining under his breath about me stealing his shot, about how this was supposed to be his bull. He dragged his feet while I was already stuffing loose gear into my pack. "Come on," I said. "We at least need to get him opened up before it's dark." "You shot it," he said. "You go deal with it. I'll rest up here." He said it with a half smirk. I stood there for a second, looking at him. Part of me wanted to argue, but the light was fading, and meat on the ground does not wait for hurt feelings. I told myself he would get over it once I started working on the bull. It was not like we hadn't bickered before. "Fine," I said. "Stay here and sulk. Just keep an eye on the ridge in case he tries to get up." I tightened my pack straps, checked that my knife was on my belt, shouldered my rifle, and started making my way toward the draw where the bull had gone down, thinking the worst I had to worry about was a long night of quartering and packing meat with a pissed-off buddy. I was wrong about that. Getting over to that bull wasn't a straight shot. From where I took the shot, There was a little finger of rock and brush between him and the draw rolled off steeper than it looked. I had to drop lower, side hill around, climb over deadfall, and push through a couple of thick patches of young fir. Half the time, I couldn't even see the spot where he went down. I just kept checking my GPS and trying to line up landmarks. By the time I got close, the light was basically gone. The sky still had a little gray in it, but under the trees it was full-on dusk. I could smell the bull before I saw him. Wet hide and that hot, bloody smell you get when something has just died. A few more steps, and there he was, piled up on his side in a little pocket below the ridge. I was sucking wind, and my shoulders were killing me. The first thing I did was drop my pack a few yards off to the side, where the ground was flat. If he'd so much as twitched, I was ready to put another one in him, but he didn't. So I leaned my rifle against a log a few yards away and told myself I'd start getting him opened up right there before it turned completely dark. Tyler would cool off and come down in a few minutes. That's what I thought. I clicked my headlamp on low so I could see what I was doing and set the beam just off the carcass. I knelt by the bull, checked his eyes, gave his ribs a shove to make sure he was done, then pulled my knife from the sheath on my belt. My hands were shaking a little from the hike and the shot wearing off. I had just started my first cut-up from the sternum when I heard something move in the brush behind me. At first, I figured it was Tyler finally getting off his ass. I glanced back over my shoulder, expecting to see his headlamp coming down through the trees. Instead, I saw a dark shape step out of the brush about 20 yards away. It was upright, big. For a second, my brain tried to call it a person in dark clothes, but the outline was all wrong. Way too tall, arms hanging too low, head not where it should be. At first, all I really saw was the bulk of it, like a huge guy in a heavy coat. Then my eyes dragged up to the head, and everything in me kind of shorted out. The head didn't sit on the shoulders right. It was pushed forward, out in front of the chest, like it was built to lean into whatever it was doing. The ears weren't on the sides like a person's. They were up on top, pointed, standing out against the dim sky. And the face, at first I thought I was looking at somebody wearing some kind of mask, because it stuck out too far. It had a muzzle. You could see the bridge of it and the way the jaw came out. Not like a beard or a hood, but like an actual snout sticking off a skull. There was just enough light left to catch little detail. The way the fur around its neck and head stood up like a mane. The shape of the nose out at the end of that muzzle, black and wet. The way it turned a little to one side, like it was sizing me up. I remember thinking, that's a dog's head on a person's body. And right after that, my brain tried to throw it away, like no, that's impossible. But it was standing there anyway. It held still and just stared at me. I couldn't make out every line of its face, but I could see the eyes. My headlamp wasn't pointed straight at it. The beam didn't really reach that far, but there was just enough light off to the side to catch in them, like when you hit a deer at the edge of your lights. They weren't glowing on their own. They were reflecting what little light there was. Even so, that faint yellow shine, way up off the ground, on something standing that tall, was enough to tell me this wasn't some idiot screwing around in a costume. It wasn't anything I could file under bear or moose or big dude in the woods. It was all wrong, and I knew it in my bones. I froze completely. My rifle was back by my pack, maybe 20 feet away. Between me and it, there was all open ground. Looking back, grabbing the gun seems like the obvious move, but right then, it didn't even cross my mind. My brain just shut down. I stayed where I was, crouched by the elk with a bloody knife in my hand and unable to move. The thing started walking toward me, slow at first. Each step was heavy, with a little crunch of dirt and twig. It made this low, rumbling growl that I felt more in my chest than in my ears. It didn't rush me right away. Looking back now, I honestly think it wanted the elk more than it wanted me. I think it was trying to scare me off the carcass. In the moment, none of that clicked. All I saw was this thing getting closer and closer, and my body just locked up. It got inside 10 yards, then 5. By then, I could see the shape of its head clearly, and a lot more than I ever wanted to. The neck was thick and rolled straight into its shoulders, with no real gap like on a person. The shoulders themselves were huge and knotted, rolling under the skin every time it shifted its weight, like you were watching a big dog push into a fight, but upright. The chest was wide, more like a thick barrel than anything, with fur thinned out over the front, so I could see dark hide and big slabs of muscle underneath. Its arms hung down in front of it, way too long, almost to its knees. The forearms were thick as fence posts, and the hands at the end of them were wrong. Half paw, half hand, big and long-fingered with knuckles like knots of wood and claws curved out past them, catching the beam of my headlight when it moved. Below all that, the legs looked like they were built to spring, bent a little backward at the joints, thick thighs tapering down to big, splayed feet that reminded me more of a dog's back feet than boots. It was like somebody had taken the strongest parts of a big dog and a strong man and mashed them together into one body. When it finally stopped, it was basically in my face. I had to tilt my head back to look up at it. It towered over me, way taller than any man I've ever stood next to. Its breath washed over me, hot and rotten like wet dog, old meat, and something sour all mixed together. The smell hit me so hard my stomach flipped. I realized I'd pissed myself, felt the warmth in my pants, and still couldn't move. It made another deep growl, louder this time, and bared its teeth. Up close, I could see they weren't like a bear's or a person's at all. Long canines up top and bottom, thick and curved, with ragged-looking smaller teeth jammed in between, all of them stained and chipped like they'd been chewing bone for years. The jaws looked big enough to take my whole face in one bite. I'd thought maybe I was overestimating how big it was when I first saw it, but seeing those teeth and how wide it could open its mouth, I knew I'd actually lowballed it. Whatever this thing was, it was built to tear things apart. That should have been my cue to back away slowly, put some space between the elk and me. If I had, maybe it would have just let me walk and taken the bull. But I stayed there, frozen and stupid, clutching my knife. The growl cut off, and it moved. 1 second, it was standing over me. The next, its arm came out, and that massive hand wrapped around my throat. The claws dug into the sides of my neck and jaw, not all the way, but enough to let me know they were there. Then it started to lift. My heels came off the ground. My left hand flew up on its own, grabbing its forearm. The strength in that arm didn't feel real. It was like hanging off the front end of a truck. I could hear my own choking sounds, feel my airway getting pinched off, and see little flashes at the edge of my vision. That's when panic finally broke through whatever freeze I'd been stuck in. I still had the knife in my right hand. I don't even remember deciding to use it. My arm just snapped forward, and I drove the blade into the thing's forearm, right where its hand turned into muscle. I felt the knife hit tough skin, then pop through into something softer. Hot, slick blood ran down over my fingers. The reaction was instant. It yanked its arm back and let out a roar that didn't sound like anything I've ever heard in the woods. It was part scream, part growl, loud enough that I felt it in my teeth. The squeeze on my throat got worse for a second, and then loosened as it jerked its arm away. For a heartbeat, I thought that was it, that I'd just made it mad enough to finish me. It leaned in close, eyes locked on mine, jaws opening. I remember seeing those teeth coming toward my face and thinking, this is where it bites my head off. Then something slammed into it from the side. The impact knocked it off balance and spun it half around. A split second after that, I heard the boom of a rifle roll across the draw. Tyler. The shot had hit the thing high in the front of the neck. I saw blood spray out in a sheet, glowing in the beam of my headlamp. The Dogman, because that's what it was, no question in my mind now, let go of me completely and staggered sideways, grabbing at its throat with one hand while it moaned and growled. I hit the ground hard on my side, air blasting out of my lungs. My knife was still in my hand, but I was too shocked to think about getting up and going at it again. All I could do was crab crawl backward away from it, eyes glued to that huge, impossible shape, thrashing and screaming in front of me. The thing jerked like somebody had yanked it on a chain as another bullet slammed into it. This one struck its raised forearm. I heard a thick, wet smack and saw more blood spray out from the arm. A heartbeat later, the shot rolled down off the ridge, a hard crack echoing around the draw. Tyler must have been aiming for its head. The arm just so happened to be in the way when it clutched the wound of the first bullet. It screamed again, somehow even louder, then quickly dropped down onto all fours like a dog. For a second, I thought it was going to launch at me. Instead, it spun around, claws digging into the dirt, and took off into the brush at a dead run. The sound of it crashing through the timber faded fast, leaving just the ringing in my ears, the stink of it hanging in the air, and the dead elk at my feet. For a few seconds, I just sat there in the needles, sucking air and staring at the trees where it had vanished. My throat was on fire. Every swallow felt like sandpaper. Then it finally hit me, the rifle. I put the knife away and almost tripped over my own feet, lunging for my gun. I was practically throwing myself at it, grabbed it with both hands, spun back around, and shouldered it, pointing the barrel at the black wall of brush where the Dogman had gone. I could still hear it out there. Not crashing around like before, just the odd sound drifting back through the trees, low moans, a hoarse howl, something between a scream and a growl. It was already a ways out, maybe a few dozen yards or more, heading away from me. Judging by the sounds, it wasn't circling back. I kept the rifle up and the safety off, watching that brush until the sounds faded out completely, and all I could hear was my own breathing and the blood pounding in my ears. The dead bull was lying there right in front of me, but it might as well have been on the moon. I didn't care about antlers or meat anymore. Every instinct I had was yelling at me to get out of there. I grabbed my pack, slung it half on one shoulder, and started moving. I didn't even look back at the elk. I just backed up until I hit the edge of the pocket, then turned and started side-hilling as fast as I dared in the dark. I kept the rifle in my hands the whole time, one finger along the trigger guard, barrel pointed into the trees. That climb back up to Tyler felt a lot shorter than the way down. Adrenaline will do that. My lungs were burning again. My legs were jelly, but I barely noticed it. I just wanted to put as much ground as I could between me and that carcass. I broke out near where we'd set up to shoot from and almost ran into Tyler. He was standing there with his rifle shouldered, breathing hard, eyes wide. When he saw me, his face lit up like a kid's on Christmas morning. "Dude!" he blurted out. "Did you see that? I nailed it. I shot a freaking dogman. We just killed a dogman." "Shut up," I snapped. My voice came out rough and higher than normal. "You didn't kill it. It's still alive." He blinked. "What?" "No way, man, I smoked it. I hit it twice. You saw that." "I saw it run off," I said. "It was still on its feet when it left. We need to get out of here right now. I'm not arguing about it. We're done." He opened his mouth like he was going to argue anyway, but then he looked at the marks on my throat. Something in his face changed. The grin faded. "You really think it'll come back?" he asked. "I have no idea what it'll do," I said. "That's the problem. For all I know, it's circling us right now. We're 2.5 days in. We have to move. Now." He hesitated one more second, then nodded. Finally, he started moving. We hadn't made camp yet, so there was nothing to pack up. We just started walking, both of us keeping our rifles out and loaded. Headlamps went on low, and we started down the trail. We didn't really talk. Every now and then, Tyler would start to say something about what he'd seen through the scope, then think better of it, and shut up. I walked behind him with my throat throbbing and my mind replaying the feel of that huge, clawed hand around my neck over and over. We hiked most of the night. We'd stop for a couple of minutes here and there to drink water or put fresh batteries in our headlamps, but we never took our packs off and never made camp. I kept thinking we'd hear it behind us, branches breaking, howling, but the woods stayed quiet except for our boots and the creek far below. Sometime early in the morning, the dark finally started to lift. The trail dropped lower, the air warmed up a little, and the trees opened just enough here and there to show a strip of sky. My legs felt dead. My shoulders were one big cramp. Every step sent a dull ache through my neck and head. Tyler wasn't talking at all by then. He just kept putting one foot in front of the other. By mid-morning, we walked out of the trees and into the little dirt lot where we'd left the truck. Seeing it sitting there after the night we'd had didn't feel real. We dumped our packs in the bed and just leaned on the sides for a minute, heads down, both of us shaking. That's when it all hit me for real. The pain, the bruises on my shoulders, the burning in my legs and feet. I could feel every mile we'd just walked. Tyler looked about how I felt. Pale, worn out, lips dried out and cracked. We were beaten to hell, but we were alive. We climbed into the cab, I turned the key and started driving toward the nearest town. We didn't say much on that drive out. We grabbed a motel room. I rinsed the blood and dirt off as best I could in a small shower, and then it all kind of blurred together. Sleep, pain, and that hand on my throat, replaying in my head on a loop. We told the lady at the front desk we'd run into a bear and had to bail on the hunt early. That was as close as I got to telling anybody what happened. I wasn't about to walk into Fish and Game and say, "Hey, there's a dogman up there that almost killed me." I went back to work a week later. The bruises on my neck turned yellow and green, then faded. My shoulders loosened up, and my legs stopped hurting. On the outside, I looked normal again. Inside, not so much. I used to live for the outdoors, counting days till I could get back in a stand or hit a clear cut. Since that trip, I haven't set foot in the woods. Tyler took it differently. He told the story like some kind of wild adventure. In his version, he saved my life from a monster, and he killed a dogman that just didn't fall right away. He watches Dogman videos now, reads forums, and sends me links I don't open. The last time we had a beer, he told me he went back into that same area with another old buddy of ours, another idiot with a gun I don't talk to anymore. They went in lighter and more prepared, according to him. He thought it was hilarious that I told him he was insane. I don't find any of it funny. I know how close I came to dying up there. I still wake up sometimes with my hands grabbing at my own throat, trying to pry fingers off that aren't there. I can still smell that thing if I think about it too hard. Wet dog, rot, and something else I don't have a name for. People ask me now if I'll ever go back into the mountains. I tell them no. They laugh and say I'm just being dramatic about one bad trip. I don't argue with them. I just change the subject. You can take this however you want. Call it a story or a bullshit tale or whatever makes you feel better. I know what I saw and what I felt when it picked me up like I weighed nothing. To me, it felt like a warning. Stay the hell out of the forest. It belongs to them, whatever they are. Guys like me have no business in there.